My name is Ethan Grumberg, and I am a regional vegetable specialist with Cornell Cooperative Extension. And I'm excited for you to join us for the third workshop in the 8-part Spray Safe, Spray Well workshop series that will be taking place through the end of March. These workshops are possible thanks to support from a Northeast Extension Risk Management Education Award. And this session is being recorded. The link to the recordings in both Spanish and English will be shared when they are available. If you have any questions during the presentation today, please write them in the chat box and we will read them aloud to the presenter during a question and answer period. If time allows at the end, maybe we can unmute and have participants ask questions live at that time. But as Adriana said, please for now make sure to keep your microphone muted through the presentations. We will also be launching a poll at the end of the presentation. While participation in the poll is not necessary, the information that we gather from that poll helps us to communicate to our funders the importance of this kind of work. So in the previous 2 workshops, we've learned a little bit about how to use integrated pest management to help determine when to use pesticides on the farm, and about how to use different nozzles and sprayers to help improve the safety and efficacy of pesticide applications. Today, we're very lucky to be joined by Sarah Whelen and Monica Wells of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, or DEC, who will discuss some of the legal aspects of pesticide applications, including laws governing who needs to be a licensed pesticide applicator in New York. So Sarah and Monica, thanks so much for joining us today.
So again, thank you for having us. Good afternoon, everyone. As he said, I'm Monica Wells, and I'm joined by my colleague, Sarah Whelen. We work for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, or DEC for short, and we are pesticide control specialists, and we work in the Bureau of Pesticides Management. And today we're here to talk to you a little bit about applying pesticides safely and legally in New York State. The DEC, Bureau of Pesticides Management, we regulate the manufacture, distribution, sale, and use of pesticides in New York State. And the way we do this is by conducting inspections, and we inspect wholesalers, repackagers, retail suppliers, applicators who are employed by farms, greenhouses, nurseries, landscapers, golf courses, farms, and different pest control companies. So what is a pesticide? According to New York State law, a pesticide is any substance or mixture of substances that are intended to use to prevent, destroy, repel, or mitigate any type of pest, or they're a substance or mixture of substances used as a plant regulator, defoliant, or desiccant. So what makes a pesticide product, or what makes a product a pesticide? There's 3 components to that. Claims of pesticidal utility, which is basically a product makes a statement that says it can kill or mitigate a pest. The composition of that product, and knowledge that that substance will be used as a pesticide. What products can be used in New York? To be legally used in New York State, a pesticide must be registered with 2 agencies. First, it has to be registered with the Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA, and it also has to be registered with us, the DEC. And there's another class of products that don't need to be registered with either the EPA or the DEC. They're called minimum risk products, but they do need to meet certain requirements that the EPA has set forth for them. So pesticide registration, what is that? Basically, a manufacturer of a pesticide has to submit data to the EPA, and the EPA has to approve and review that data for it to be legally sold in the United States. Additionally, in New York State, for a pesticide to be legally sold, it has to go through an additional review process through us at the DEC to make it a legal product to use and sell in New York State. So how do you know if a pesticide is registered for use in New York State? There's 2 options. First, please call us. We have a database that we use. And we have every single product in there known to be registered and legally used in New York State. However, if you don't feel comfortable calling us, we do have a website. And on our website, we have the New York State Pesticide Applicator Database, which we refer to as NYSPAD, NYSPAD. The website listed in this slide will take you right to that page on our website, so you don't have to navigate through the million miles of our state website, which can be kind of confusing sometimes. So when you type that address into the search bar, it'll bring you to this page, the Bureau of Pesticides Management Information Portal. And this is the website where you can search up products that are legally registered for use in New York. So NYSPAD, as I just said, it contains all the pesticide products registered for use in New York State. And you can search for these products in a multitude of different ways. You can look for them by the EPA registration number that's assigned to them when the EPA registers the product. You can search for products by the product name if you're looking to see if a particular product is registered for use in New York. You can search for these products by active ingredients. So let's say you have an active ingredient you like, but you're looking for maybe a different product. You can search for that. You can search for products based on the target pest you're looking to control. And most importantly, NYSPAD will give you access to the most current copy of that product label, which is very important because in New York State, we consider the label the law, so it has to be followed. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, there's another group of products that are allowed to be used in New York State that don't go through the registration process through the EPA or the DEC. And these are what we call minimum risk pesticides, and they can also be referred to as 25B exempt products. These are not subject to federal or New York State registration because the ingredients that they have, both the active and inert ingredients, are shown to be safe for use. So they do not have an EPA registration number on them. The website that's listed on the bottom of this slide brings you to the minimum risk page at the EPA website. And you can look up lists of the active and inert ingredients there. So what are the requirements of minimum risk pesticides? A minimum risk pesticide must meet certain conditions to be exempted from the registration process through the EPA. First, the active ingredients and the inert ingredients must be listed on that list that I just discussed. That's on the EPA website. They're commonly used products, mostly used in food, grade items, things like that. The other requirements are all ingredients have to be listed on that label. They cannot make any claims to control, mitigate microorganisms that pose a threat to human health, such as it can't state anything like it kills ticks that cause Lyme disease. It can say it kills ticks, but it can't claim to control ticks that cause Lyme disease. They can't have any false or misleading label statements on them, making claims like chemical free. That's false and misleading. All these products are technically chemicals. And they have to list the name of the producer, and the company's contact information also has to be listed on that label. So now that we discussed what can be used as a pesticide, let's briefly discuss what cannot be used as a pesticide. Anything being used to kill, repel, mitigate a living organism that is not registered or is not a minimum risk product. So those products can't be used as a pesticide. So for example, we run into often people using vinegar and water as an herbicide. That's not a registered product, and it doesn't meet the requirements for a minimum risk. Acetic acid isn't one of the listed active ingredients. Okay, so now that we covered a little bit about the basics of registration and how to figure that out and what can and can't be used as a pesticide, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Sarah Whelen, and she's going to get into some of the specifics about the label and certification.
Okay. All right, hi, my name is Sarah Whelen. I'm another inspector with the Department of Environmental Conservation. Before I start moving on to the additional slides, just want to make sure that there aren't any questions before I move on.
So far, there's nothing in the chat, but as a reminder, if anyone does have a question and it comes up during the presentation, feel free, please, to enter that into the chat box, and we can share those questions aloud with the presenters. But I think for now, go right ahead.
Okay. All right. So as Monica had mentioned, you can find copies of the pesticide label on using that database, the NICEPAD and NYSPAD database. The reason why it's important to have a copy of that label, number one, the labels that are usually found on the pesticide containers, the print is very small and they're very hard to read. So if you need an additional label that you can actually read, you can use that database. The label, as Monica mentioned earlier, we consider that label the law. It is New York State regulation, and it's also federal law that all pesticides are used according to label directions. Most of you are probably familiar with, I've put up on the screen, there's a directions for use box. And the first sentence of that box is, it is a violation of federal law to use this product in any manner inconsistent with its labeling. So we are very adamant about that. All instructions listed on that label, no matter how much you may disagree with them or think it's not following the best IPM protocol, it has to be used that way. Okay, so I'm gonna go through the different sections of the typical product labels. The labels are very valuable. They have a lot of information, how to use them safely and how to use them legally within New York State. Most of this I'm going to be referring to. Now, earlier we went through New York State requirements. This pertains to all pesticides, whether you're using them in New York State or you're using them in a different state. This applies because, again, there is a federal law that oversees this as well. So one of the main boxes, and that this will be right in the beginning of the label, is the precautionary statements box. This is important because it lists the different personal protective equipment you may need to wear while you are mixing the product, while you are loading the product, and while you are applying the product. Just be aware that sometimes the personal protective equipment can be different for those mixing the product versus those applying the product. It will probably list chemical resistant gloves, maybe a face shield, a chemical resistant apron. Most of them always require long pants, long sleeves, socks, and shoes. Another important part of the precautionary statements box is it will list any environmental or human hazards. If there are any hazards, say to aquatic insects or invertebrates that the product can cause, it will specifically tell you do not apply to surface waters, do not apply to rivers, to tributaries, anything that contains any aquatic organisms. So again, also, I'm just going to mention, if you, in that box, it does also give instructions for how to properly wash your personal protective equipment. So after you are done mixing the product and applying the product, it will tell you exactly how to take care of your clothes that you were wearing while you were handling the pesticides. All of them will say if they become saturated in pesticides to just discard of the clothing. So another section that's very important to follow and read up on is the storage and disposal section of the label. Most of them will warn to keep the pesticides stored away from food, from pet feed, seed, for the obvious reasons of contamination. It's very easy for bags, for containers to break and leak and can contaminate any food that may be around the pesticide products. When you're almost done with the pesticides, don't just throw it into the garbage with a little bit of product left in it. They want you to use it up, all the product according to label directions. So when you are done with a pesticide container, you're going to triple rinse it or wash it out and reuse that rinsate. So the mix of the water and the pesticide, you're going to reuse that in your tank. Okay, and you're going to apply it according to the label directions. So this is a typical storage and disposal section that you can find on a label. Again, some may have temperature restrictions on them, and it is very highly dependent. It's very specific to the individual product that you're using. There is no overall standard storage guidelines that we have. It's going to be based on the instructions on each individual pesticide product. For example, this one says avoid storage at high temperatures. So if you are storing these products outside in a barn, in a shed, just be aware on hot summer days, just be aware of the temperature. If it goes above a certain degree, it could change the composition of the pesticide and it will not work the way it was intended to. And it also then results in you losing money in the end, unfortunately. Most labels will also have, like I mentioned before, the triple rinse process. That's a method of rinsing the container with clean water 3 times and emptying out the rinsate or the leftover into your application tank. Okay. And then we get into the heart of the pesticide label. So the directions for use. This is where you're going to find your very specific directions for where the pesticide can be used and where it cannot be used. So some will be labeled specifically only for food crops. Some labels may be labeled to be used on farms or on orchards and also on residential areas. Some of them may be only labeled for use in aquatic areas. So just please be aware, go through the directions for use and make sure that you are applying the product exactly where you are allowed to apply. It may also have specific nozzle or droplet sizes to reduce drift, and also has specific application rates for different equipment used or pests targeted. So you're going to go through the use directions, find the target pest you're looking to treat for, and you're also going to look to make sure that it doesn't list different rates for the apples you're treating or the peaches you're treating. Just be aware there can be different rates listed. Another part of the directions for use that pertains to this group on this presentation is the agricultural use requirements box. I'm sure most of you have seen this box on pesticide labels. It must be followed if the product or the pesticide is being applied to an agricultural commodity. In this box, you will see that it states that you must follow the Worker Protection Standard, or WPS as we call it for short. It also contains additional safety information, such as the restricted entry interval, or REI. That tells people how long they must stay out of a treated area for. So this is it's very common to see this on almost every pesticide product, the agricultural use requirements box. Again, the first sentence states you must use it in accordance with the Worker Protection Standard, or WPS. If you keep reading through this box, in the middle there, it says do not enter or allow worker entry into treated areas during the restricted entry interval, REI, of 4 hours. So this means once you apply the product on an agricultural commodity, so if you are working on a farm, a forestry, nurseries, greenhouses, orchard, a vineyard. If you're using this specific product, which is Roundup Pro, you would have to keep everybody out of that treated area for 4 hours. This one is a pretty simple agricultural use requirement box. Again, this one is dependent on the pesticide product, whether it's going to be short and simple, or if it's going to be long and detailed and in-depth. Now, some of you may have used this already or have had experience with Captain 4L. This agricultural use requirement box is much more in-depth. It will give you specific or additional personal protective equipment to use and to wear. It also states that there are separate REIs or restricted entry intervals for the crop that you're treating. So for example, if you treat apples with Captain 4L, and this is just a number I'm grabbing out of my head, it's not the exact number listed on the label, but for apples, it could be 24 hours. But meanwhile, for peaches, it could be 48 hours that you need to keep all your workers out of that treated area for. Okay, so as I mentioned, the worker protection standard goes along with that agricultural use requirement box and must be followed if you are applying any pesticide, whether it's a general use product, restricted product. If you're applying any pesticide to an agricultural commodity and the label contains the agricultural use box and you employ workers or pesticide handlers, that WPS training and additional safety requirements kicks in, okay? It is a very complicated regulation that was created by the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, and we as the DEC enforce it as is on a state level. It was mainly created to protect the health and safety of agricultural workers and pesticide applicators. As I mentioned, it's very detailed and in depth. So I am not going to go through all the requirements for the worker protection standard right now, because that will be a whole nother 2-hour presentation, which I doubt you want to sit through. So if you have questions on whether the worker protection standard applies to your farm, please reach out to us at the DEC, or you can reach out to Cornell. They have great resources to help you out with determining whether it applies to you, and if it does, how to actually comply with it. If you already know that the worker protection standard applies to you, or you just feel like having some light reading today later on, you can use the Pesticide Educational Resources Collaborative, which is a federal program that provides worker protection standard resources. Everything is in multiple languages. It is in English, it is in Spanish, and it is in, I believe they have Polish. There's multiple languages where they give you the resources in. They provide training. They require training for workers and handlers. They provide YouTube videos for that you can show your employees. There is a how to comply manual that goes through each required section of the worker protection standard. There are safety posters that you can download and print out. There is also a respiratory protection guide. This pertains to any product label, pesticide label that requires the handler or the pesticide applicator to wear a respirator while making the pesticide application. And again, I will not go into detail about that. It's very long, but if you have questions about that specific bullet point, the respiratory protection, you can always reach out to us. Okay. So before I mentioned agricultural commodity, just to define what it is, it's any plant or part thereof or animal product produced primarily for sale, consumption, or other use by humans or animals. This is a very broad definition. It covers anything from apples, potatoes, grapes, wheat, corn, soybeans, any type of vegetable. If you are growing it for the intention to sell it for consumption by humans or animals, it is considered an agricultural commodity. This includes anyone from farmers, ranchers, vineyardists, orchardists, foresters, nurseries. There's a whole bunch of people where this would apply to. Okay, so earlier, Ethan had mentioned pesticide certification. Now, this ties in directly to the definition of an agricultural commodity. If you are applying pesticides, any pesticide, whether it is a registered pesticide or a minimum risk pesticide, for the purpose of producing an agricultural commodity on property that you own or lease, or it's your employer, we consider this or term this at the DEC a private pesticide application. Once you make a pesticide application on land you do not own or lease, we term that a commercial pesticide application. All you need to be concerned with right now is private pesticide application. So again, if you're applying any pesticide on property you own or you lease, or on your employer's property, that is considered a private application. Now, do you need certification for that? Yes and no. It depends on the classification of the pesticide you're using. So for using general use products, so those are products you can go to your local hardware store and pick up. Or if you're using minimum risk products, that does not require certification. You can do your own pesticide applications if you own the property, or if you work for someone who owns the land or the farm, you can use general use products under them. You do not need any license from us. However, if you're looking to use a product that will get the job done really well, let's put it that way, restricted use pesticides, those are products that have active ingredients that are known to be more toxic to humans or the environment. That does require a license or certification from us. So again, restricted use pesticides that require a private applicator's license from the DEC. They are classified as restricted by either the federal government at the EPA level or on the state level by the New York State DEC. Again, this contains an active ingredient known to pose greater harm to humans, animals, or the environment. These products you cannot even purchase without a private license or private certification. If you go to a distributor, a local distributor that sells pesticide products, they cannot sell you any restricted use products unless you have a certification card to present to them. Now, this does get tricky with the ability to buy pesticides online now. We have found numerous restricted use products that are being sold on Amazon that anyone can order. Just please, word of caution, if you know it's restricted in New York State and you cannot get it in New York State, please do not buy it online to get around the system. There's a reason why they're restricted. Some of them can cause groundwater contamination if you apply it. Some can cause the death of animals. There's a reason why they are restricted either on the federal level or the state level. If you see a product online that you are thinking of buying and you're not sure whether it's legal to use in New York or not, again, you can reach out to us, give us a call, or you can use that pesticide applicators database, also known as NICEPAD. So again, If you're looking to use restricted use products on your farm, your greenhouse, your ranch, your vineyard, you do need a private applicator's license or certification. There are specific eligibility requirements you would need to meet in order to obtain that license. Again, it's in depth, it's lengthy. We are the state, so we do make things complicated to obtain a license. But once we walk you through it, it's pretty easy. The best way to get the information for how to qualify for a license, how to sign up to take a certification exam, the best way to do that is to reach out to one of us directly and have a conversation with us. If we find out that something has been done wrong in the past or currently being done wrong in the past, please do not let that deter you. We do not, if you call us for help, we will not come out and do inspections. We will not get you in trouble, basically, okay? We are here to help you. We want to get you all on the right path to begin with. So please reach out to us if you have any questions at all. So speaking of that, here are the contacts for our regional office. So the New York State DEC, we split our areas into regions. Our region 4 is just another term for our office is in Schenectady, New York, and we oversee 9 different counties in our area. If you are out of state and you're looking maybe to get into New York State, you can call us. If you are licensed, or if you are out of state, you're looking to get a license in another state, typically you want to contact your Department of Agriculture. If you are having trouble finding a contact info, there's our numbers. You can call us, we can look it up for you and pass on the information. So again, there's Monica who spoke first, me, our supervisor, Mark Solon. He's been here a very long time, great wealth of information. So please take down our numbers, take down our names. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, if there's any questions, please feel free to, you can ask them now, or if not, just call us later. We don't mind.
Thanks so much for the presentation, and you're not off the hook just yet. There are some questions that have been trickling in. So the first one, which Tony put into the chat, is that you talked about the role of the EPA in approving and registering pesticides, and a little bit about the DEC. Tony's question is there any role that the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, plays in the registration process?
Monica, so Monica is from a horticultural background. I do know that the FDA sets food tolerances for specific crops.
That's the only role that I currently know that they're involved in, but they don't have anything to do necessarily with, to do with the registration process itself. But as Sarah said, they do set certain tolerances for organic farming or just tolerances in general. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it is. Hopefully, go ahead. Sorry.
The only other thing I can think of where it may play in, now we personally have not heard of the FDA actually reviewing pesticide product labels before the EPA registers them, but there are, just be aware, on pesticide labels, there may be days to harvest limits. So after applying to a certain crop, it will say do not harvest for 14 days or 7 days. So again, that's just to make sure that there isn't residues that are too high that could be toxic to people who eat the produce or the vegetables.
Great, thank you. And Tony, if you have follow-up questions about that, feel free to either unmute yourself now and ask or type those into the chat. I think one of the other questions that came in is this, the participants in this workshop are predominantly organic growers, not using restricted use pesticides. And so a question that we get a lot that kind of echoes what this person has asked is, for an organic grower not using restricted use pesticides, is there any other reason to get an applicator license in New York State? And can they themselves do the training for the worker protection standard as a organic grower who does not have a pesticide applicator license?
So if you're just using general use products or minimum risk products, you do not need a license in New York State. There would be no other reason, unless you, for some reason, you have an infestation of a disease or an insect that requires a very specific product that is restricted in New York State. There's no other reason why certification would be needed.
Unless you're using a plant growth regulator, because that would require certification.
Are they restricted?
I don't know, some of them are.
If, again, only if they're general use, then you wouldn't need certification. As for doing the WPS training, if you're not certified, if you go to that PERC, so the Pesticides Educational Resource Collaborative website, they do have courses on there, what's known as train the trainer courses. So if you're not a certified applicator, you can take that train the trainer course and become an approved trainer for WPS materials. And then you could train your employees with the WPS training.
Great, thank you. But and just to clarify and reiterate, so in order to complete the WPS, the Worker Protection Standard training in New York State, you either need to have gone through that approved train the trainer process or be a certified pesticide applicator in the state, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Tony has another question, which is, if you wanted to report a complaint regarding pesticide application and resulting loss of crop, I imagine, how would you do that and who would you contact?
Well, I guess it depends on what the complaint is. I mean, like a misuse complaint, is that what you're? Most pesticide complaints come to us. We get complaints all summer long, based on all kinds of things, your neighbor, a farmer. I don't know about loss of, it depends on how the crop loss occurred. So if you misuse the pesticide to cause the crop loss, that would be different than the product being defective, I guess. Am I understanding the question?
Tony, are you willing and able to unmute and follow up on that?
Yeah, I'm a beekeeper. Been beekeeping
Oh,
here, and a few years ago, I lost half of all of my hives, and I believe it was with pesticide application, not
So,
for
yeah.
agricultural use, but for clearing out land for surveying and development.
Okay.
And
So in that situation, you would contact us and then we would come out and do an inspection and an investigation.
I encountered people applying the pesticides that showed no proof that they were licensed to do it. So is that a requirement? And that they have to, upon request, show that they're licensed to do what they're doing?
So this is for clearing land, you said?
Yes,
Okay. So it would depend, is this private land, public land?
private land.
Okay, so again, it's very situational dependent. If it's private land and the owner or the person who leases the land is doing it themselves, they can apply products on their own property without certification, as long as it's not a restricted use product. But if they are, say,
You
overspray,
say that, when
Go
you
ahead.
say they, do you mean they are the ones actually applying it? When someone hires someone to do that,
Yeah, that's different.
that's different.
and that's
That's a
what I,
commercial application and they would need to hold certification. I don't know if we have any laws necessarily stating they have to show somebody their card when asked, but they would need to have commercial certification to make an application if they were hired.
are they required at all to post? I know like the lawn care people, when they spray, they post something regarding when they sprayed and recommending how long to stay off the lawn. I mean, when somebody does any kind of spraying, do they have to post that there was some kind of mass spraying done in that area?
Yeah, if it's a commercial application and they're doing land clearing, they should be posting, because it's still considered a commercial, what we would consider a commercial lawn
Lawn
application. So Tony, quick question. What county do you live in?
Rensselaer County.
Okay. Did you take down our phone numbers at the end?
Yeah, I took a photo of the page.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. So this is going to be like, we need to work out more details before we could
Yeah.
give a legit, like a straightforward answer. Would you be able to call one of us?
Not
We can
really.
discuss this?
We remediated the issue amongst
Okay.
them.
Okay, so if there are ever any future issues of that nature, Sarah, me or Mark would be the people to contact if you would
Right.
like an investigation conducted.
Yeah, we just found that a little bit too onerous to deal with at the time.
Right.
So I was the past president of the Southern Adirondack Beekeepers. So it's not, it's happened before to our members. And it's frustrating not to be able to really get a resolution. It's hard, you have to prove as well, but it happens.
Yeah,
It does.
but as we mentioned earlier, we regulate any type of pesticide use. So whether it's a homeowner,
Right,
from a commercial business to a farmer, anything where you suspect a pesticide isn't being used correctly, give us a call. And we can, talk it through and see if we have any legal standing to go and conduct inspections of these individuals, okay?
yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Tony, for that question and for the responses. I have another question in here from one of the participants, and it's basically they noticed that all of the label excerpts that were in the presentation are in English only, and they were wondering if there's any effort being made to make label information available in other languages as well that you know of.
So the label information, so for example, Roundup has been making their product labels in English and Spanish. That is dependent on the manufacturer to take that step when it comes to the actual label. Most companies are starting to do it because they are, becoming more aware to the fact that there are people who speak other languages that need to use these products. And if you can't, if you want to use it safely, then it should be done in the language that they understand. So that, again, that goes back to the actual manufacturer of the product and putting the resources in to have the label interpreted.
Great, and I'll add a follow-up question to that, which is, again, just to clarify, as we have both Spanish and English speakers participating, for individuals who might be interested in becoming a licensed applicator, that process is only available in English at this time, correct?
Correct. The exam has to be taken in English, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
So there are some organizations that will provide the course. So there's an eligibility course that can be taken. Some provide it in another language. We can try to find, if you would like to find one, we can try to find one for you where they give you the basic pesticide safety and training in the language that you that's your native language. However, our state examinations are in English, and most of the pesticide labels are in English. And that is what we test you on, is whether or not you can read and interpret a pesticide label. So that is it's a conundrum that we're stuck in right now. And it does limit those people who can get certification in the state.
Great, thank you. If anyone else has any questions, now would be a great time to either put those in the chat or unmute. But while we're waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. So just make sure anyone who's a co-host, just keep your hands off the keyboard for now, because we all have the ability to end the poll. But for all the participants, if you could go ahead and fill out the poll questions here, if you can. There are 3 questions here about what the content that we covered today and what you hopefully learned. I will add as well, and I will share a screen in just a moment. Sarah and Monica mentioned that there are eligibility courses that are available in other languages. My colleague Teresa Rusinik and I will be actually offering a prep exam, a preparatory course, a 2-day kind of training course for people who are interested in getting their applicator license on March 2nd and 3rd. So if you are interested in participating in that for free as part of this program, please reach out to us, or you can go ahead and just express that interest in the chat, and we'll make note of that. That training program will be available only in English for the reasons that Sarah and Monica just mentioned, that the exam is in English. However, we are trying to work with our colleagues at Penn State University as well, who have historically offered a Spanish language preparatory course for their applicator exam as well, for bilingual individuals who will still take the exam in English, but will cover some of the technical material in Spanish to try to improve understanding for dominant Spanish speakers. So even if you are a dominant Spanish speaker and you're interested in becoming a licensed applicator in New York State, you can please reach out to me as well, and we'll keep you updated as we continue to work with our colleagues at Penn State on that. Great. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. So if that's the case, then Sarah and Monica, I want to thank you again so much for taking the time to chat with us today and for sharing your contact information. I guess before we wrap up completely, so you represent Region 4.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk really quick? We have folks, I think, from Region 3 as well. Just talk about maybe the regions in Eastern New York that might be relevant to folks.
Sure. So Eastern New York. So us, Region 4, we cover Rensselaer, Columbia, Schenectady, Albany, Montgomery, Otsego, Delaware, and Greene counties. And Schoharie, sorry. I always forget one. South of us is Region 3, so south of Columbia County is Region 3. They are based out of New Paltz. They cover any counties north of the Bronx and south of Columbia County. So Westchester, Rockland,
Sullivan,
Sullivan, Ulster,
Orange.
If you cannot find their contact information for that specific region, call us. Take our numbers. We will easily give you the phone numbers for our counterparts in the Region 3 office. And then north of us is Region 5, so Saratoga, North. They, same thing. we can give you their contact info.
Great, thank you. And one final question that came in the chat right now on the material safety data sheets, or MSDS for their abbreviation in English. Are those available in other languages other than English that you are aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, not that I am aware of, but again, that the SDS or MSDS sheets come or are manufactured, produced by the company making the pesticide. So it's going to be dependent on the manufacturer, again, to create that sheet in another language.
Great. Yeah, and I'll just echo, what you said earlier. There are more companies who are now making an effort to provide those materials in Spanish. So more and more, you'll see some companies making that effort, especially in the organic space. Marone Bio Innovations has done a great job with that, just to shout them out. But great. Well, thank you both again for the presentation and providing your contact information. Thank you to Adriana and Ala for their interpretation work and supporting making this a bilingual space for our participants. And as I mentioned, if any of you is interested in pursuing the process of getting your applicator license, please reach out and let us know, and we're here to help support you with that. So thanks so much. We'll see you all in 2 weeks for our session on safe and effective use of sanitizers in the wash and pack.